Okay.
I'm glad Tom's doing this because I wouldn't be able to.
We're live now, Doug.
All right, what's up, everybody?
Live
Happy
on the
Sunday.
track.
You're enjoying this June gloom. As
June
Coach
gloom.
would call
It's
it. Yeah.
warm, but we got the overcast skies up here. We always show the sun and the overcast.
This guy is the star right there.
He's the star. He's the star today.
I love that guy.
Swimmer running on the track.
Yes. The people
So-
are dedicated out here.
We have we might have a technological first here.
Yeah. Well, let's introduce our guest.
So you're
me
going
first.
Garcia Boxing.
Yeah, this
hat?
is new. Yeah,
That
Garcia
looks like
Boxing.
MTV.
That's what I was thinking. Early,
Yeah,
like
look at that.
1983 MTV, you know, from the moon. And I got my my Triple G, Canelo Alvarez, Golden Boy
you're rooting
Media.
you're rooting for the third fight.
Well, I'm figuring it's in the air. I mean, it's that's the biggest fight that can be made.
It's in the
Is
air.
that correct, right? And you believe it can be made despite
The
certain
biggest makeable fight
tweets,
right now. Yeah,
certain blustering.
This year.
Yeah, posturing.
definitely. And we have a special guest
Yeah.
today.
Yeah, well, exactly. You know what? Gennady Golovkin a couple weeks ago fought for the first time over 160 pounds, so he kind of had his little brief four-way. Just
First
tested the
time.
waters at super middleweight against Steve Rolls.
There were a couple firsts.
Looked sensational.
First time 160 over 160 since I started working with them,
Yeah.
and first non-title fight since I started
First
working
night.
with them.
Wow, you know,
Yeah.
you're right about that. Yeah.
Somehow
But
somehow
it was still the
judges-
big drama show.
Somehow the judges in Vegas figured out a way to take his titles from him in that 12th round.
Well, the IBF did that even before the judges.
Yeah, that's true.
Worked their magic.
That's true, but
And Canelo Alvarez in December fought at super middleweight against Rocky Fielding.
Right.
And we got an up-and-comer in the super
that was
middleweight
Canelo's
division.
second time at super middleweight.
Yes, it
Not
was. The first time was
168,
Chavez Jr.
164.5.
That's super middleweight.
And here we do. You're right. We do have a super middleweight here, one of the top rising super middleweights in the sport.
And he was on the undercard.
He was the co-feature on the Triple G show.
He was the co-feature, and so was Samir. Samir was the co-feature
Samir,
after that
we
fight
have,
because he got some airtime, and he was on the jumbotron, and he was pretty hyped up. He was jacked up, Blair
So
Cup
this is
style.
Ali Akhmedov, 15-0 with 11 knockouts. Right? Right, Ali?
Да.
Ali from Almaty, Kazakhstan, right? Ali?
Is that the same area that Golovkin is from?
Gennady is from Karagandar.
Oh.
It's closer to Astana for those geographic.
What is Ali's city known for? Or what part of Kazakhstan is it from?
Еще раз.
We got Samir translating live.
Ну, мой город это очень большой, очень красивый, но по мне это самый прекрасный город.
No, Almaty is it's a huge city and it's very beautiful, and I think, in my opinion, this is the best city in the world.
Really?
Was that
So
the
it's the big
former?
city, huh?
Was that the former capital, Samir?
Yeah, it's the former capital of Kazakhstan.
There you go. See, there you go. Someone says King Ali, one of the fastest rising stars in boxing. Ali had an impressive knockout over Marcus McDaniel. He was Marcus McDaniel was undefeated, 15-0,
Yeah, and capable
and capable.
dude.
A good test for Ali, and Ali passed with the flying colors. Sometimes when people go on a big stage, big arena like Madison Square Garden, right? Dave, you've seen that a number of times. You get on the big stage and then they freeze up, and fighting an undefeated Marcus McDaniel was a big, it was a good accomplishment for Ali.
And how does it feel fighting, I think, for the second or third time at super middleweight? Because Ali came
That's right,
down
moved
from light heavyweight.
That's right, moved down from 175.
Yeah.
Каково тебе в супер middleweight драться уже во второй или третий раз,
Я
получается?
чувствовал себя вполне комфортно, и я думаю, что в этой категории на сегодняшний день это будет гораздо лучше для меня. Я готов, в принципе, и в light heavyweight драться, но на сегодня я чувствую, что супер middleweight это лучшее решение для меня.
I felt myself really comfortable in this weight category, although I still can fight in light heavyweight, but as of today, I'm feeling very, very comfortable.
See that, Doug? See that technological advance that we have here. You're impressed, Dave, right?
Totally.
This might be your first. You have Garcia Poker on also, but with Ali, that's right. He was 175. He moved down to 168. This is an interesting trivia fact. He started his camp, training at the Summit with Abel Sanchez, and then we all know how everything played out there with Abel and Gennady not being able to agree.
So he ended the camp with
and then he
Jonathan Banks.
Moved to the camp with Jonathan Banks and Triple G. So he actually got the benefit. Ali got the benefit of working with a nutritionist, working with a strength and conditioning coach, Jonathan Banks, all that. So that was a kind of an unusual training camp, right, Ali? Starting first at Summit and then moving to and then actually. He was training with Jonathan Banks, but Max Golovkin was his chief second in the corner. So it was.
Samir was in his corner also.
Samir was in the corner. Stitch Duran was in his corner. Yeah. And Kirill Potapov from Kazakhstan.
Samir, how'd you like being in the corner of a big fight like that?
This was amazing. This was great. I was a little worried,
Let's see
but
if we put Samir on here. There we go.
Ali finished this one quickly, so it was not that difficult, but it still was a lot of excitement. Я говорю, меня спрашивают, каково было у тебя в углу. Я говорю, ну я волновался, но слава богу, что Ali так быстро закончил бой, поэтому в принципе все прошло нормально.
Now we got Samir on Periscope.
That's smart. I like that.
This is high tech.
All right. Someone's asking about Chocolatito. So Chocolatito he had injured himself. He went through his rehab. Okay. So now we're just waiting on news of what he plans to.
Chocolatito hasn't fought since last September, right?
He
Since
was
the
scheduled,
undercard
remember,
of
he was
Canelo
scheduled-
Golovkin too.
Yeah, he was scheduled to be on the December 8th show.
Right.
Which Cecilia Berkus was on the HBO.
Yeah.
And he got injured, and then we had Juan Francisco Estrada, who so he just beat Sister Cat. So
He's now Ring Magazine Junior Bantamweight champion.
One of your
and he's
top
in
10.
our pound for pound as well.
Right. And so we had Ali was there yesterday. We were watching the Bare-knuckle Boxing.
Говорится, что смотрели с
Да,
тобой
мне это,
бой на кулаках с Поли.
да, мне очень понравилось. Я болел больше за Лобова, наверное, и мне очень понравилось.
I liked it a lot, although I was rooting for Lobov more.
Это, конечно, не бокс, это, конечно, не бокс, но в нем есть тоже свой интерес.
Of course, this is not boxing, but this sport is interesting as well.
Was that the first time you saw the Bare-knuckles?
Yeah, my first time.
We bought the pay-per-view. Paulie did a great job of promoting that
He
fight.
did. Otherwise, I wouldn't
show.
have had any interest in it. It wouldn't have earned my attention because I don't really know those MMA guys. Like, I don't know Lobov from anybody. And I didn't know any of the names of any of the other fighters that were on the undercard, but I know who Malinaji is. And he sold that beef with Lobov, attracted a lot of attention. And I like some of the concepts of bare-knuckle boxing. I like the ring. I like that circle ring. I like 2-minute rounds. I like the 5-round limit. Every fight moves really quickly.
Seemed like the action.
And then the fighting itself, it's bloody. If you don't mind blood or if you like blood, it's a sport for you because everyone's going to get cut. Everyone's going to get marked up. But you don't get the knockouts. You really don't get, because you can't load up so much with bare knuckles because you're going to break your hand, as Paulie did. Paulie later that one good right hand to Lobov, and of course he broke his hand. And we all knew he broke his hand the moment he landed that one good shot. So you're not going to see like big knockouts like you see in boxing. You can't consistently punch hard, but there's drama. I mean, it's combat sport competition.
And that circular ring looked pretty
Yeah,
cool.
no, I like it.
Someone just commented on the
and
circular
the
ring.
production wasn't bad. The direction wasn't that good. I couldn't listen to the commentary. For some reason, I just couldn't hear them. And maybe it's just because I don't really know or wasn't really watching with the same kind of interest that I would a boxing match. So the commentators would just kind of chatter in the background or whatever. But overall, the production value of it, I thought they did a decent job. I think there's potential there if they can keep bringing names from the boxing world and the MMA world to it. Like, I wouldn't mind seeing like Ricardo Mayorga bare-knuckling it up with somebody, or like Antonio Margarito, or some of these
Someone
guys who
asked
have done
about-
boxing, but they've got names and they have their fan bases. You bring them back to see what happens.
This is, someone asked about, we talked about yesterday about Randall Bailey. I wasn't
Right.
sure if he was scheduled on that.
I think he was,
show.
and then his fight fell out.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so
Yeah.
a name like that is
Yeah.
good for.
And maybe Bailey
show
gets
like
those knockouts that we didn't see.
Someone says that Tyson Fury is the ex bare-knuckle Gypsy King.
Hey, he would probably kick
Tyson
ass.
probably had a few bare-knuckle fights in,
Sure.
in his days.
I know his dad did.
He had a great showing on ESPN.
Yeah, I mean,
last
everyone
week.
was, hardcore fans were pissed off about that broadcast because the ESPN commentators beat everybody over the head with the lineal champion thing, and they made a big deal of Fury taking out like a prospect, a guy who's not ranked, not a world-class heavyweight. But they achieved their mission, and that was introduce him to the ESPN audience. Introduce him, establish that he's a champion, or at least has a claim to the championship. And really, it was a showcase for his showmanship and his personality more than it was what he did in the ring. And what he showed us in the ring, listen, he took care of the guy the way he should have taken care of the guy.
Yep.
And in those 2 rounds, or 1.5 rounds, you saw the movement. You saw the ring generalship, the switch hitting and all that. So
Tyson's a great
it was an
self-promoter.
introduction. That's all it was. Hardcore fans got to just mellow out. That's the nature
He's
of
a
the
great
business.
showman. He did what he had to do,
And he's lovable.
And if you're not into the lineal championship thing, just ignore it. You don't have to consider him a champ.
but he did.
You don't need to argue with everybody about it, though. Chill out, everybody.
He did do something that no one had done for a long time. He beat Vladimir in Germany.
Hey, I look at him as the lineal champ. He beat Vladimir, and he hasn't been defeated since.
And then last night, or let's go to the Triple G fight. We were talking about him training with Jonathan Banks and the whole change of everything.
I like the work rate from.
What'd you think of the knockout
Triple
that
G.
he had?
Beautiful. It was beautiful, and it
was
was
a
so
one-punch.
seamless.
Right.
When I saw it in real time, I thought he landed a big right hand, but it was a left from the southpaw stance. But he was orthodox. He heard him. He landed that like
See, Doug's good
overhand
at
corkscrew
breaking this
hook to the forehead.
Yeah.
And that discombobulated Steve a little bit, and Rolls went to the ropes, and he just followed him and landed right on the button. So it was vintage, big drama show.
And set up by the body shots, right?
Oh, the body work. Well, Rolls presented that because Rolls would just cover up right in front of him.
Yep.
And so, yeah, we saw the combination punching and the body punching that we haven't seen from Golovkin in a few fights. So that was refreshing. I like his work. Overall, I like the fact that he's 37 years old and he still outworks everybody he fights.
A very high work
Yeah.
rate. Yeah.
That's admirable. Admirable. It's
And then-
early. I can't talk
And
this
last
early.
night, someone wants to see you do a jump rope contest with Ali.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think?
That's
Jump rope
not a
jump
contest.
rope
That's
contest.
just me getting embarrassed.
Они хотят, чтобы соревнования ты сделал с Дагом по прыжкам из каталки.
We're gonna have to see
I
Ali
can't
on
keep
the
up
jump
with you,
rope.
Tom. So
Next time when
yeah.
Ali's prepared, we'll see him on the jump rope on
Yeah.
the future one.
Yeah. So where does Ali train when he's not in Big Bear?
When he's here, he'll go to
Churchill?
the Churchill. Yeah.
That's cool.
Али, где ты тренируешься, да, спрашивают.
Да,
Говорят, в Чорчилле.
We'll do a periscope from Churchill.
Yeah, we can do that. We'll do a daily dialogue. This is a track talk.
Сколько в Чорчилле делать с тобой?
We'll do a daily dialogue from the Churchill Boxing.
Yeah, and we got friends there because Chris Van Heerden trains
Chris
there.
is there.
Brian Valoria is a trainer.
Regis Prograis was there.
Oh, Regis.
Regis.
Yeah, that's Regis's place. Yeah. Regis
And,
has got a huge fight coming up. It's not been scheduled yet, but it's the World Boxing Super Series final against Josh Taylor, and that's a title unification at junior welterweight, and the vacant Ring Magazine 140-pound title will be
Brian
on the line
Valoria.
in that fight.
Trains there.
So
as
let
a
me
trainer.
ask you this,
Yeah.
Dougie. Who was your fighter of the week this week?
Oh yeah, we had that big show last night. I mean, it's
All
Friday
right,
night.
so
One guy.
for me, the performance of the week was Andrew Cancio, repeating
yeah.
that knockout over Albert Machado, because Machado had a really good camp this time, was very focused, didn't have the same struggles with weight, had a really good opening round, but Cancio set such a torrid, brutal pace, and he knew just what he had to do. Get in that tall, rangy southpaw's chest, work the body, and really turn it into a gut fight. And he did that, got the better of Machado in the second round, even though he suffered a disgusting cut over one of his eyes. and then took care of business in the third round. Scored that body shot knockdown or knockout of Machado, and now he's like a real player at 130 pounds, and there's a lot of options for him. I'm proud of him. I'm happy for him. That's an inspirational story. Yeah, a guy has a full-time job, and he's always been more of a fringe contender gatekeeper in the sport, and it's great to see those guys rise in boxing. But before my fighter of the weekend was Blair Cobbs. Yeah. I love his energy.
Exciting.
He's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
He's like, you can't really call him a prospect because he's already 29 years old, but he's unbeaten. He's a welterweight. He's got a sideshow bob afro. He looks like my younger brother Scott, and he's a lot like him. He's got he's called the Flair, Blair the Flair. He's got the Ric Flair. Woo!
That's what I was just
He's
gonna
got
ask.
the energy, the electricity.
That was
Do
good.
that again.
Woo!
Wow.
That's how he does it. And he steals himself up. He gathers it up.
Hey, Dougie.
Woo! And he's got the crazy eyes. He's
No,
looking
no,
right
he
at
does.
you. He's a little bit nuts. Yeah.
That's good, Doug.
I practiced. You just can't do
Wow.
that. But Golden Boy last
that's
week,
the highlight of the
Golden
show.
Boy put him in. Whoa! That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Let's see if Ali can do that.
Oh, he's like, I ain't doing that.
Hey, this guy.
He's gonna knock guys
but
out
I tell you,
instead.
the show on the Zone Friday
It was fun.
might be the best show I've ever seen, top to bottom.
It was
And
entertaining. Yeah.
Jesse Vargas is an announcer. It's really good.
He's on top of it.
The other guy
And he's
was
just as good in Spanish.
And
And
the-
his partner's really good.
the partner was very good.
Sorry, I forget the guy's name, but I like it's just the two of them.
Yeah, and he was like a real pro.
Just the two of them
announcer.
and
Jesse
Claudia.
Vargas is a good.
Claudia Trejo.
Yeah, Jesse
Yeah.
Vargas is
Yeah.
a good commentator.
Very
Oh,
good.
He's
Are you
He's
saying
good
it
English
came
and
close to
Spanish.
some of our Superfly shows with Chocolatito and
it was
Inoue?
good. It was a good show. Oh my god.
And
That was-
remember some of those?
Yeah, but those are
Superfly
but
shows.
that's you're talking about Superfly 1. That was historic. That was a
Yeah.
fight you had to be there. Dave's
That's right.
talking about just sitting at
Regular
home
fight,
on a
right.
Friday night just watching
and
TV.
I was watching
It's
it
great.
on my phone.
Oh, were you?
Yeah, I loved it. It
Oh,
was
Yeah,
just-
you
I
like
watched it on
streaming?
TV.
You like streaming it on your phone? Dave's
do.
high tech now.
Yeah. Now
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have.
He's always been ahead of the curve. Yeah.
I am the oldest high tech guy. But anyway, that fight was.
Well, you started Airbnb before anyone knew about Airbnb. What year was that? When you rented it?
That was in the 70s.
70s, where you rented out the mansion in Beverly Hills on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
And wait,
I
someone
like
was asking. Someone was saying Aaron McKenna.
Aaron,
Very
yeah,
good-
Aaron
good
was on that
performance.
undercard. Yeah. Aaron, the silencer. Aaron and his brother Stevie are going to make names for themselves. and
They
are
run here at the
beasts.
track.
Yeah.
Aaron,
I haven't
McKenna-
seen them here
Yeah,
yet.
I've seen
Yeah,
them.
I've got to.
Yeah, I've seen them.
I'm
They-
glad to hear that. Yeah.
They look like 15-year-old kids.
Yeah, they do. They look like choir boys. Well, they're young. Yeah, they're young guys, but they can fight, and they're mixing it up on a daily basis with the best fighters in and around their weight classes at all the top gyms in Southern California.
Yeah.
And they'll drive to Oxnard to get that smoke.
Someone, Sweet Science was asking if there's any truth to the rumor of Vanis fighting Angulo on Fox.
There's probably some truth to that.
That's a good fight.
That's a very
Yeah,
That's
I
actually
like
a good
Vanis. I like Vanis. I like them both, but I favor Vanis in that fight.
Vanis is underrated just because Triple G
Very
stopped him in
good.
2 rounds. I mean, Vanis is a solid.
Nobody has
solid
an easy
fighter.
time with Vanis. The only person that did was
Look
Triple G.
look at Andrade.
Triple G's elite.
Look at Vanis and Andrade, right?
Andrade, that was a split
Andrade,
decision.
Yeah, split
And
decision.
Vanis with Jamal Charlo. That was a very close fight. Oh, you know what? Charlo fights tonight.
That's right.
Jamal Charlo
the
fights
154-pound
Cota.
Charlo, right?
Yes, the junior middleweight.
I'm reading something
Former
about this.
junior middleweight title holder.
Oh, Samir's doing research at the same time. So we have not only a translation, we have research department on
bad.
on FaceTime.
I think I read something that the fight is canceled, but I'm not sure. Or maybe I'm wrong here.
What fight
Which
is
fight?
canceled?
Charlo fight.
No, that
No
was,
way.
Harrison, Tony Harrison got injured, but the fight still.
Yeah, the fight goes on. Yeah, yeah. Now that the original matchup I was looking forward to, the rematch between Tony Harrison, who I like a lot. And,
That's going to be a much anticipated rematch.
Yeah, they'll do it again.
Tony was a big underdog, came out and won that title.
Yeah, that was in December.
Hey, so
It's
Tom, I know
controversial.
everyone wants to ask you this question, so I will. So where's the third Triple G Canelo fight going to be?
That's a good question. We need to see first. Hopefully, not too many people got scared by that knockout over Steve Rolls.
If the fight is made, I think New York City's a front runner.
I hope it's going to be MSG because
Yeah, I think
those
MSG
guys
is-
are, you know.
Samir, what did
That'd
you
be a
think? We're
story.
going to put you back on. I don't know if people can see you. What did you think about the atmosphere at MSG?
You know, it was amazing, and you know the people were great. And I've seen so many people with Kazakhstan flags of all races and nationalities just holding those flags. You know, this was really great for me as someone from Kazakhstan. But also the Madison Square Garden staff members, they were just, you know, very professional, very friendly, just doing their job. And overall, it was great. You know, one of the best fights of my life, I think that was.
Are you glad you went, Samir?
Absolutely.
Samir not only went to his first fight in Madison Square Garden, he was working the corner. He was working the corner of all these fights.
That's an experience.
How about that, Doug?
That's an
The
amazing,
very first
yeah.
fight
And
at the Garden, and
he was
he's in the
there
corner.
for the huge upset. Andy Ruiz's knockout over Anthony Joshua, so he was there for
That's
that.
right. We all went
Hey,
to
Doug,
that,
what's
to that
your
show.
first fight at the Garden?
My first fight at the Garden, I think it was either Oscar De La Hoya against Daryl Coley, or it was Lennox Lewis against Michael Grant. Both were pretty big events there. Yeah, it was very memorable.
My most memorable fight there was, I think it might have been the first fight in the big arena, was Kevin Kelly and Hamed.
That's hard to beat right there. So that for you, 1997. For me, 1999.
But Kevin had fought at the theater many times before that.
Oh, no.
He might
Actually,
have
those
fought in
fights
the
that I
big
just
arena.
mentioned, they were in 2000. What fight was there in 90? I feel like I was there in 99 for something. Was it the first? Maybe it was the first Lennox Lewis Holyfield fight. Was that in 99? I was there.
That could have been.
The rematch was at Thomas and Mack that year.
From the
Says,
best to the worst.
Whatever, they were, yeah, well, it was a
Yeah,
bad decision,
2000,
but those were
Michael
huge
No, I
events.
meant for the venues.
Oh, yeah.
Thomas
Oh,
and
yeah,
Mack.
Thomas and Whack.
Yeah,
Yeah, oh, that's the worst. Yeah, no, I don't like that. But I had seen some really some big fights there. Roy Jones Jr.'s heavyweight title win against John Ruiz, that was there in 2003. At least one of the Manny Pacquiao Eric Morales fights. I think maybe the rubber match might have been there. I was there for a lot of fights. But
Remember
yeah,
one night-
getting there was always a pain in
They
the
had
ass.
two different fights going on in Vegas, one at Thomas and Mack and one at a hotel.
Who was the?
Yeah.
I got a
Yeah, I
question
remember
for you.
that.
Who was the guy that Holyfield fought at the Garden before he got the Tyson fight?
That was Bobby Shez.
Bobby Ches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he didn't look that good.
He
against
was
Shez.
wasn't he in the Mensa Society?
Yes, he was. He's a smart
And
guy.
I think Holyfield got the Tyson fight because of that performance.
He did not look
against
good.
Ches.
He didn't look good. Yeah. But he was all wrong for Tyson,
Wrong style,
especially that
wrong-
version of Tyson. Absolutely.
Right. So, do we have anything? Any closing comments?
I don't know. What fight is everybody looking forward to the most? That's
Upcoming
coming up.
fights now.
Yeah.
I'm looking at Pacquiao.
Pacquiao. Coach wants to see Pacquiao
Yeah, I
and
guess so.
Thurman.
Yeah. So we're 1 month away from that. Less than a month away.
exactly, Yeah.
If I don't go to Vegas, Coach,
Yeah. Yeah.
So we got odds here. So Coach is taking.
he's
Manny.
rooting for Pacquiao.
No, I'm-
but I think he's picking Keith, like me.
Well, I think it's a tough fight.
It's hard to call.
Yeah, very. It all depends on where Keith is
Yeah.
because
agree.
mentally.
Yeah.
So I don't know where
And
he
you know,
is. And he-
Pacquiao can do a job on guys. He's not as good as doing a mental job on guys as like Floyd Mayweather or Bernard Hopkins or some other dudes, to where they don't fight their best. Like you and I thought, definitely in the rematch, Tim Bradley, and in the rubber match, Tim Bradley should have had what it took to at least outpoint Manny Pacquiao. But he steps into that ring
yeah.
and he loses it. He's not himself, you know. And I've seen other guys do that against Pacquiao and against other kind of like legendary names, you know. So you wonder if Keith is strong enough to go in there and fight Keith's best fight. And on one hand, Keith looks like he's really got it together, and then on another hand, you're like, are you just doing this for a payday or because whatever?
He could have gone past it.
We don't know. We don't know where
So you're
Keith's.
your prediction is the young man.
He's
Young-
30
younger
years
man.
old, and I
Younger
think he's
man.
good. I think he's talented.
Mm.
I think he's a bright guy. I think he hits hard enough to get some respect. I think he's definitely better than Adrian Broner. You know what I mean? So I'm not expecting that kind of fight. And honestly, in the early rounds against Adrian Broner, I'm looking at Pacquiao, and obviously I'm looking at him with historical goggles, right?
Yeah.
I'm looking at him knowing what he looked like in his prime, and I'm comparing the two, right? He's still a very good welterweight, okay? Obviously world class. But to me, he looks slow. By Manny Pacquiao standards, he looks slow and not as active and not as mobile. Broner's Broner, but against a real world-class welterweight, I think he gets exposed. But is Thurman still a world-class welterweight? There's a bit of a mirage there because he hasn't been active in a long time. So you wonder if that fight he had Josecito Lopez earlier this year, did that knock off all the rust? Did that ignite the fire in his belly?
Then we got someone's also talking about Danny Garcia, Mikey Garcia. It's going to be.
That's an interesting fight.
That's a great fight.
It's a good fight.
And before the Errol Spence fight, I would have loved Mikey, and now I don't know what's up with Mikey. I don't know, and the fact that Mikey is staying at welterweight makes me wonder. Okay, what are you? Are you boxing in your best division to be the best you can be, to leave the legacy you can, or are you fighting in an unnaturally heavy weight class to make the money? Like our good friend the Ghost from Gilroy, Robert Guerrero.
Guerrero, right.
He was at his best. He was a featherweight. He was at his best at lightweight, just like Mikey. Mikey was a featherweight, went up to lightweight, at his best at lightweight, but the money and the glamour was at welterweight, and he really couldn't cut it at welterweight.
Seems at 140.
But he made money.
He hit the jackpot.
He made a lot of money. More money than he would have made at a lightweight. So I'm wondering, is Mikey doing that? I don't know.
But Mikey's way better than Robert.
Yes, that's true. That's true. But Danny Garcia can fight.
Oh, Danny.
I think Danny's actually a little bit underrated. People hate him, but I think he can
Samir
fight.
has a question here. Again, let's see.
When is the next Hollywood Fight Nights? When is that gonna happen?
Next Hollywood Fight Nights, we're gonna make the announcement here pretty soon, probably within the next week or so. And Doug will be hopefully commentating again, depending on your schedule.
Hopefully the Flushing Flash will.
And Kevin Kelly.
Yeah.
So
And Cynthia content.
and
The
Cynthia
hostess
Content.
with the mostest.
Yes,
So
please.
we'll sign off now. Thanks everyone for joining us Sunday mornings.
Yeah.
Thanks Ali Akhmedov for joining us. Ali, say hi to your fans.
Все говорит?
Передай привет фанатам.
Да. Всем большой привет. Ждите новостей, ждите новых боев.
We'll see Ali in
Don't
the
worry,
ring.
brother. Just saying hi to everyone and wait for news. Wait for the news about me.
The next fight. So we'll work on keeping that momentum going for Ali that he generated there at the MSG,
He's got it.
the MSG Triple G show.
And after this show, be sure to tune in on Doug's Periscope.
We're gonna run some laps, right?
We're going to run first, and then we're going to come back, and I got a whole bunch of questions.
Dave is
for Dougie.
rejuvenated with his questions. He's got a new research source, so you're gonna have some tough questions.
I bring it on.
Doug.
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right.
And
So
Dave's rejuvenated with the sprints too, man.
he's running a lot
Yeah,
faster.
he is.
I have a new acupuncturist. That's true. No, it's a true story.
You got to share that number with me then.
So I just have one question about Ali. Who trains you now? Does Jonathan Banks stay? Does he live in LA now?
No, Jonathan's in Detroit. Jonathan actually opened a new gym out there in Detroit.
Yeah.
So when he's training without Jonathan, he'll just
Да.
go down to the
Спрашивает, кто
Churchill
тренирует
and
Yeah.
do some basic training down there.
Да. Что мне надо ответить? Нет.
So,
Ну,
okay,
сейчас
so
я
sounds like you're
как бы
answering
скажу,
the
что
question,
сейчас я только недавно провел бой. И сейчас начал тренировки, начал бегать. В понедельник я уже пойду в боксерский зал. И мы с моим промоутером определимся с боем и начнем уже полноценную подготовку.
Yeah, I just had my fight, so far I've just been running and just taking it easy. But on Monday I'm going to the gym and actually start boxing, the boxing training, and then I'll meet with my promoter and we'll discuss the next the next event.
And Ali is official member of Triple G Promotions, so he's definitely being pushed by.
You know,
by
Ali is a
Gennady.
big super middleweight.
Yeah, he's very big for 168. So
Yeah, but that's-
we expect good things from him.
No, that's good.
И
good things
должен
from
сказать, что я себя
168.
чувствую отлично.
He feels himself very excellent, so he feels on the top of his form.
Yeah, that's good.
All right.
Okay.
All right, everyone.
See you, Samir.
Join me on my Periscope next.
Oh, yeah, Doug's Periscope is Dougie Fisher What is it?
If you follow me on Twitter, yeah, it's at Dougie Fisher.
At
If you
Dougie
follow me
Fisher.
on Twitter, it'll give you the link.
We'll do the link.
I'm logging off. Bye, everyone.
Okay. Bye,
Later,
Samir.
Samir.